to our third National Preparedness segment on fuel. Super excited to have you join. My name is Chandra. I'm the owner of DealstoMeals, and I am just here to help you get started to know how to store fuel, how much you need to store, what you need to store, and give you a few ideas to help make this process a little more simple. If you've missed our videos, check out our videos on YouTube and my Instagram on storing water as well as food. So when people ask me, where do you begin with preparedness? I always say, first, start with water. After you have your water supply for your entire family, then start building up your food supply. Once you have about a 3-month supply of food, then I would start to think about your fuel storage. And the reason being, we could eat cold food. Let's be honest, if we really had to, we could, and we would survive and that would be okay. But if you don't have food, it's a lot harder to live comfortably. So first get your water, then your food, and then let's talk about all the different ways we can store fuel and have power in our day-to-day lives. If for some reason we had a scenario where the power went out, we didn't have heat, we didn't have a way to cook our food. There's lots of different scenarios this could happen, whether that's a natural disaster. Really, that's probably the biggest scenario that you wouldn't have power. So we're gonna mostly talk about kind of an emergency situation today, and thinking through that, they recommend that you have about a 2-week supply at minimum of ways to do 3 things. You need to have light, you need to be able to cook your food, and you need to be able to stay warm if you live in a place where staying warm is a concern. If you live in the middle of Phoenix, maybe not as big of a concern. You probably need to find ways to stay cool. Here in Utah, the winters are super brutal and cold, and if the power were to go out for an extended period of time here in my area, we would really be suffering. So we're going to talk about those 3 aspects: light, heat, and cooking sources, to be able to help kind of break it up into smaller chunks. So let's talk about light. If any of you, I remember as a young child, the power would go out, it's dark, and it's a little scary feeling, especially to children and even to adults when the power is out, especially if it's out long term. So there's so many small, inexpensive ways you can start preparing for a lights out scenario. So a few tips are candles. That's probably the very cheapest way to have light. So any inexpensive candle, you can go to like your local thrift store. They have so many just kind of dorky candles that nobody really likes anymore. We now like the little fancier ones, that you can get from other stores. However, in an emergency situation, you're not going to want to have all the scents and smells of your scented candles. So these are not ideal for an emergency situation. You want to store candles that do not have any scent, because that scent could really make you nauseous if you're in an uncomfortable situation anyway. So store all different sizes, sorts of candles. I just have kind of a tub, a container that I just have any of our old candles that we don't really use anymore. Instead of throwing them out, just kind of create a little bin where you have candles. I have tapered candles, small candles, all different sorts of candles. And in that tub, I also make sure to store plenty of matches, because you need to be able to have a way to start those candles, whether that's a regular match or one of these fire starters. Watch for these at Costco. You can get a set of I think 6 to 8 of them for super inexpensive. So whenever I see that at Costco, sometimes it's in the summer, I snatch these, but you can also get these on Amazon. And all of the things I talk about today, I will have links under my blog post for this segment, as well as my YouTube channel. So check out, get plenty of these so that you can start those candles without having to stress too much about it. Candles are a great way. Flashlights, another super important thing to have in your food storage, emergency preparedness plan. I like to make sure that we have flashlights in everybody's little dresser next to their bed. Because if the power were to go out in the middle of the night, that's a scary scenario for kids. So make sure that you have flashlights pretty much everywhere. I like to have them in my car, on every level of our home, in our bedrooms, so that they can quickly have that light source if they needed that. So this is my favorite brand. It's just Gear Light. You can get them on Amazon. The thing I like about this set is it's $30 and it comes with 2 really strong LED flashlights, as well as 2 headlamps. And these are really nice because if you were in a scenario where you needed to like walk around and find kids or clean up debris or do whatever, like let's say there was an earthquake, it's nice to not have to hold your flashlight and go about your day. So this is a really good solution to have a headlamp for everyone in your family. So for $30, you can get 2 sets of these, and I really recommend getting those for every member of your family. All of these items I talk about today are really perfect for birthdays, for Christmas gifts. I would recommend, these are like awesome stocking stuffers. So have flashlights everywhere. It's also important to have some crank powered ones. So this is a flashlight, radio, and USB port. It's $10 on Amazon, super inexpensive. Put one of these in each of your kids' stockings, put in your cars. Just a really great way. I don't know if you're like me, my cell phone is always dead. I must obviously use it too much. And so it's never really working as long as I need it to. So it's important to have lots of different ways to be able to charge your phones and get light, even when some other aspects might be gone. So same thing with like the USB power banks. These are good to have on hand for your cell phones that you can charge in an emergency. You can also get larger power banks, of course, and you can just, you could hook up an actual lamp to these power banks or some sort of small light source to help give your family light in the case of an emergency. So lots of different ways with light. You can even buy a solar light. Just think through, what you would do if there was no power for light. Lots of different options for that. Of course, you can build a fire, and just, but if you're wanting to stay inside, you want to think through some of those options. If you're a camper, you probably have one of these lanterns. These are really awesome to have because you can just put them on the counter. Of course, with every product I'm going to talk about today, make sure you read the instructions to know which items you can use indoors and which items you should only use outdoors. So some of these you would want to crack a window depending on the temperature of your home, but these are all great options for light. So that's kind of all I'll talk about with light today. We're now going to move on to heat. In a summer situation, you're not going to be hot if your power goes out, but you'll probably be cool. So make sure that you have enough cooler clothing that you could wear, be able to open windows, that kind of a thing. But most of the concern would be if the power were to go out in cold months of the year. So the least expensive thing to have on hand is lots of blankets, right? All of us probably have tons of blankets. Have nice heavy duty wool blankets if you have wool blankets, or just nice blankets for every member of your family. Costco is awesome at blankets. Right now, I was just there yesterday. They have tons of their really nice big fleece blankets for around $10 to $15. That's a really good thing to have for every member of your family, and just have plenty of warm bedding, clothing, so that if your home were to get pretty cold, you could stay nice and warm just by what you could keep on your body. They also have at Costco these gloves. I love these gloves. They're super lightweight, but they stay nice and warm. They get, they're like the 32-degree gloves. As well as they have all of those 32-degree clothing for under thermal clothing. You could just layer up, of course, if you were to be inside your home trying to stay warm. Now, if it was a scenario where the elements were coming in your home, windows were broken or whatever the scenario may be, or you had to pick up and leave, it's also really important to have warm winter clothing for every member of your family, whether that's a nice coat, a hat, gloves like we talked about, all really important things to have. At the end of the season is a really perfect time to find these on sale. I was able to get these like $90 snow pants at the end of winter this last year for $7. So I bought a pair for every member of our family. And it's just really nice. Whether you ski or don't ski, it's just a good thing to have in case you had to really be in a super cold situation for a while. So that is kind of how you can stay warm just with stuff you probably have already around your home, but just think through, as kids are growing, you know, it's easy to have kind of like a system for when your kids are small and then they grow out of it, and maybe you have stuff in 72-hour kits. Just go through it every now and then and just make sure that those clothes will fit. A few years ago, I looked through and my youngest child, who's now 13, had a onesie and diapers in his 72-hour kit. So make sure you're a lot better than me and just keep up on that. And in a 72-hour kit, there's really great ones online. They'll have things like thermal blankets and survival kits. This is one that I really love. It's around $30 on Amazon. And I got one of these for all of the kids in my family and for us to have in our car. It has those emergency blankets that are really nice. It has flint and steel. It has compasses, matches, lots of different nice survival things that you could use in the case of an emergency. And again, it was only $30 and it came with a flashlight as well. So things like this are just nice to be able to have in your car. And then if you needed it in your home, you could quickly grab it. Usually our cars stay where we are, so it's nice to have in case you were away or in case if you were just staying home. If you're a big camper, we love to camp. It's also really important to have a nice heavy-duty tent. If for some reason you needed to leave your home, it's just good to have a tent or some sort of shelter that you can grab and go. If you're not much of a camper, that's okay. They sell what's called a life tent. It's from Go Time Gear. It's just a really awesome, like as cheap as you can get, but can keep you really warm in case of an emergency, and it's $20. So this is a really nice option. You could even just keep it in your car, or you could put it in a 72-hour kit and just grab and go if you needed to. So that will help keep you safe and warm in some situations. Of course, we can't prepare for every situation, but this will hopefully help you with some of these, whether you're staying at home or having to leave. Another important thing when needing to stay warm and dry, we all know as soon as you get wet, you're miserable. So to have nice heavy-duty ponchos, one for each of your family, is a good thing to have in case you had to leave or the elements were coming in your home or whatever the situation may be. Having some nice weatherproof gear is really important. And of course, you can start out with a $20 poncho, and you could go up to like hundreds of dollars for an all waterproof outfit. It just depends what level of preparedness you're wanting to prepare for. I kind of go somewhere around the middle range. I hope that the disaster is not so crazy intense, but that we have some of the basics to help make sure our life can stay comfortable. So think through some of those ways to stay warm with heat again. One of my favorite products is this Big Buddy, and I'll have links to this if you can't see it here. It's by Mr. Heater. It's a Big Buddy. It's a nice, really good size propane heater according to the package, is for indoor or outdoor use. So, of course, read through all the instructions, but that's a really nice option. If we were to have to kind of hunker down in our home for a while to stay warm, you could kind of all go into an enclosed room and then just turn it on as needed to stay warm. I don't know if I would keep it on during the night. Again, read the instructions to make sure you're safe. But to have some sort of heater that you could use that goes off of propane once all of your power power sources are gone. If you have a generator, generators, again, you can get one for like $100, like this Die-Hard one where you could simply plug in an electrical heater. You want to make sure you keep these plugged in at all times. So we have in our closet an outlet, or maybe in a garage or a mudroom. Have these plugged in all the time so that if this case came about where you needed to use it, it's plugged in, charged, ready to go. It's not going to do you a lot of good if it's just sitting in a closet and it's not charged. So make sure you keep those charged so that you can use those. Once this is gone, it is a good option if, as you continue down your preparation path, that you have a generator. Generators can be extremely expensive. So think about your family's budget, what your needs are. You have a couple options with generators. You have a propane generator or a gasoline generator. I would definitely recommend getting a propane generator. They generally are a little more expensive, but storing propane is so much easier than storing gasoline. And so if you can find those propane generators, there's some really good ones that are around $500 that could really help, keep your family running comfortably, cooking light, heat for about a week or two. So that's a really good option to have on hand if your budget allows. Of course, if it doesn't, there's a lot smaller options that can do similar things without, hurting the budget. So let's talk about storing propane and gasoline. There's a lot of different fuels you can store. The average American uses 1.5 gallons of gasoline per person per day. So for a family of 7, you're looking at 10 to 12 gallons for one day's use. Now, of course, in an emergency situation, we're going to cut way back on our usage of gasoline. But gasoline only lasts about 6 months to 12 months, so about a year at the very longest. You can buy some additives that you can add to your gasoline to get it to last up to a year. We like to plan on 6 months. So we have, a supply of gasoline, and we try to rotate those, whether through our UTV or a 4-wheeler, just to use up that gas, or even just a lawnmower, or you can put it in your car. So kind of every 6 months, go through your gasoline storage, use it up, and then refill it. It's kind of painful to fill up gasoline lately when gas is over $4 a gallon, but you'll be sure glad you had that if you needed it in an emergency. So just remember that gasoline doesn't have a long shelf life, so store some of that. Some states do have laws as to how much you can store. So some you can only store about 25 gallons on your property. Check with your local city and state and know those rules for yourself. But around 25 gallons is usually okay to store at your home. So make sure you're storing it correctly, and I'm going to have a handout that will give you some tips and tricks and help you remember how exactly to store. And you can, again, just print that off, just like my water handout and my food storage handout. Just kind of keep them all in a binder to help you remember exactly how to do some of these things if it gets to that point. So propane is awesome. It's a really clean energy that can last indefinitely. So the nice thing about storing propane, whether it's in a 20-gallon tank, they also have the tall 100-gallon tanks, which are nice if you have a propane generator, or even just the small propanes. These can all last pretty much indefinitely as long as they're in a cool, dry place. They're not punctured. This is a really great way to store fuel for your family. So kind of take into calculation how much you think you're going to need for a generator, maybe a lantern, some of your different power banks, or your cooking stove. Make sure you know how much you need so that you can make sure and keep at least a couple weeks supply of propane at your property. So propane is my number one fuel that we like to store. Again, there's lots of different options. Firewood is another way to stay warm. If you have like a wood burning stove or a fireplace that can transition into that, or even just a fire pit, those are all really great ways to have a quick fire to give heat and comfort to your family. It's nice to store like flint and steel, which, like I said, is in that survival kit, or even just like these fire starters if you don't want to store a lot of liquid fire start. I can't remember the name of it, but these are really nice because they store forever and they're waterproof, and I'll put a link to these. But these are fire starters. You don't need any paper and kindling. All you do is just put these in your fire pit, light it, and it will burn for about 6 minutes. Give you time to find some wood and get your fire going. And they're waterproof, so really good option to have. So other than heat sources, another thing to think about is cooking. Yes, we could eat cold food, but that's not going to be super comfortable. So when cooking and thinking of your food storage, you do want to make sure that you have at least, a few days up to a couple weeks of food that you could quickly and easily make. if a natural disaster happened, we're probably not gonna break out our wheat, grind our wheat, make our bread. We're probably not going to want to do that. We're probably going to be a little stressed in the situation. We want just fast comfort food that we can warm up and heat and cook quickly. So you need to think through the ways you're going to cook. We again love to camp, and so we have anything from this basic camping stove to like a camp chef or a Blackstone. You have your grill probably in your backyard. That's another option of how you can cook food. There's also like stoves in a can that is just easy to have on hand. You can take this with you as you go, and there's lots of different brands. I'll link to my favorite. But just think about how you're going to cook your food. It's really important when having a way to cook your food that you think of meals that you can easily make. So for breakfast, let's say you have powdered milk in your food storage, which I talked about in my last class. You definitely want to have that. You don't have to have your milk cold. You could just make up enough for breakfast, have it with cereal in your food storage. Breakfast is done. Lunch, you could do like a canned soup. You could warm that up. You could make homemade tortillas. You can make bread on your grill. It does take a lot of practice to kind of figure it out. You could hook up, they have like a bread maker, you could hook up to a generator, but really in kind of an emergency situation, we're not probably going to be making homemade bread. You'll probably want to make more like a homemade tortilla, which is just basic ingredients, a little bit of oil, flour, water, a little bit of salt and sugar. Simply roll out that tortilla, and you could even put that on the grill or just put it on a griddle or a camping stove, and then you could still make like a peanut butter and jam sandwich or a tuna fish sandwich, and that would feel very familiar to your family. Dinner, there's lots of different options you can use of things that you could just quickly warm up. The reason you want quick meals is because you want your fuel to be able to last as long as possible. So you're not going to want to be boiling water or boiling rice or beans that take a long time to cook. You want to reserve that fuel so that you can be able to cook longer with it. One of my favorite products is the Thrive Life ready-to-go meals. Ready-to-go meals are becoming a really popular thing in America. And Thrive Life, I'm not kidding, I've tried so many of them, has hands down the very, very best product for these. So I'm buying these up like crazy. I love them so much. Not only do I love them on a night when I don't have time to cook, I love them for emergency situations. So if you have money, these are on sale right now, and they go on sale pretty regularly. A 5-pack is on sale for about $55. So that's about $10 for a pack, and this has 3 really large servings. So this could feed 3 adults, or 2 really, really hungry adults, or multiple kids. So the nice thing about these is all you have to do is boil water, just bring it to a boil. It doesn't even have to be boiling. It could just be really hot water. Open up this package, dump in the water, fold it up, and then let it just sit there for about 5 to 10 minutes. Once it's refreshed and hydrated, you just open it and you could serve it right out of the bag. You don't need any silverware other than a fork, and they cook up so easily. The thing I love about Thrive's meals is there's so much less sodium. There's not all the additives that so many of those have. And so these are just made with their high quality, delicious, freeze-dried food. So they also have 3 new flavors, which I love. My very favorite is chicken teriyaki, and I'll link to that. But this is just a really nice way to have a meal ready to go in an emergency. It'll literally take maybe 2 minutes of boiling water, getting water hot, and you have a meal ready to go. So I would recommend having as much of you need of these for maybe a 2-week supply. That way you don't have to stress about dinner, putting things together in an emergency situation. You just have things ready to go and eat when the time comes. So I'll link to those to make sure you can get that discount. It goes through the end of September, and that will happen again as we go. So remember, again, keep it simple. Start with things you already have around your home, but think through those three scenarios. How will you have light? How will you stay warm? And how will you cook your food? Once you have those three bases covered, then you're ready to go. One last tip is to store a lot of paper products. Again, you're not going to have a dishwasher. You're not going to want to be cooking and boiling water for cleaning your pots and pans and everything. So have a good supply. I like to keep a supply of utensils, plates, and cups and napkins in my storage room that I just have up at the top that I'm not touching unless it's an emergency. So keep some of these on hand to help you, again, lower your fuel usage so that it can last a lot longer. So feel free to reach out, leave me any comments, questions. I know, of course, we couldn't cover everything, but hopefully this helped you get thinking about how you can be better prepared for a power outage or any scenario that comes our way. So thanks for stopping by, and check us out next month as we'll have some more tips and tricks for you and delicious recipes you can make from your food storage. Thanks for coming by.